morning, rise and shine to the morning momentum, your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines. This is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. Welcome to the broadcast this morning, today being the 7th day of February 2024. Let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the papers this morning. And we start with the Standard newspaper. Now, the elephant in the room, where the buck stops. 6 Kenyans have lost their lives and hundreds others injured in an accident that could have been avoided. Yesterday, the government paraded suspects associated with the illegal gas business, but left out senior government officials who are responsible for regulating such enterprises. That story is further highlighted on page 2 and page 3. Now, the big question here is where the buck stops. Now, we have the photos of the following government officials. Now, Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja, as the city's planner, governor's order on LPG traders yesterday came a little too late. All right. Now, on the other hand, Daniel Kipto, director of EPRA, the law requires EPRA to work with other agencies in bringing to book illegal operators. CS Energy and Petroleum Davis Chirchir in guaranteeing that the trade in LPG is safe, the buck stops with the CS. On the other hand, Petroleum PS Mohammed Liban, as the accounting officer, Liban is responsible for ensuring dealers play by the rules. So, the big question, where is the buck stopping? That story is highlighted on page 2 and page 3 of the Standard this morning. On page 4, Raila calls compensation of fire victims. On page 20, international news, Senegal on edge after polls pushed. Also on business news, CBK interest rate to prop shilling. We'll take a look at that story on page 18. Back in the country, national news, why Chebukati's name causing political ripples. Talk that the former IEBC boss could be lined up for a judicial appointment has stirred politicians, with the idea splitting the groups down the middle. In the meantime, the lawyer is maintaining a low profile. That story is highlighted on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Let's take a look at page 2. Soup on gas refilling plant as Kenyans raise safety concerns. Officers raid illegal gas store facility in Kitale after tip-off by Nyumba Kumi in Mombasa, as some of the gas refilling stations are operated at night and are not labeled. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 2. On page 3, officials to blame over city gas explosion. The men who watched as greedy businesses set up death traps. The officials with oversight and regulatory mandate slept on the job. That story is beefed up for you on page 3 of the Standard this morning. Let's take a look at page 4. Raila, give gas explosion victims 500,000 shillings. Now, Azimio leaders ask state to take action against those who illegally operated the premises. The fire killed at least 6 people and left over 280 others with injuries. You want to catch up with more of that story on page 4. Also on page 4, proprietors of Embakasi gas plant to face murder charges. That story is also on page 4. On page 5, unions split over TSC's push to review mandate. NAT says proposed changes punitive to teachers, but Kupet agrees to participate in planned consultation. And that story is augmented on page 5 of the Standard this morning. On page 6, why Chebukati name is yet again causing anxiety in political circles. Political analysts say the plan to appoint Chebukati to the Court of Appeal has been in the pipeline for a while now. Opposition leaders argue that because of IEBC controversy when he served as the chairperson, Chebukati should not hold public office. We want to catch up with more of that story on page 6 of the Standard this morning. On page 7, Senate blasts Nakuru County leadership over drop in revenue. Revenue has dropped from 3.6 billion to 1.6 billion over the past 1 year. Senator says county setting a bad precedent by disobeying court orders. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 7 of the Standard. 8. Court orders bank to return title illegally used to secure 4 million shillings loan. Woman says nephew used her family's title deed to get a bank loan after her husband died. Now, she became when the cooperative bank sent auctioneers to sell the property, and more of that story is beefed up for you on page 8 of the Standard this morning. We shift to page 9. Security reps warn of sacking overpay row. They say directive on minimum wage of 30,000 shillings is not affordable. Fazul accused of making unilateral decisions that can plunge subsector into chaos. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 9. We move to page 10. And now, businessman assets recovery agency in Raw, over 55 million shilling cars. Man claims ARA keeps shifting goalposts and in the process tarnishing his reputation. Assets Recovery Agency initially claimed traders' cash was obtained from drug trafficking. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 10. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at the expert opinion inside the Standard this morning. Should school fees be paid through e-citizen? Should school fees be paid through e-citizen? Now, Wellington Waliaula says yes, and he is the chair Kenya National Parents Association in Trans Nzoia County. His sentiments are charging of extra fees will come to an end. On the contrary, Eliud Wafula says no. Eliud Wafula is Kupet chairperson, Trans Nzoia County. He says the state is busy creating a crisis, so the payment of school fees through e-citizen should not be employed. That story is beefed up for you on page 13. More of expert opinion is beefed up for you on page 14 and page 15. Now, let's move to page 16. The UON Chancellor Vakojen plans to turn around university fortunes. 3 pillars of his strategy include driving innovation, building global partnerships, and investing in people. New appointee says fostering culture of creativity and invention will attract top talent and put university on global chart. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 16 of the Standard this morning. Also inside the Standard is the Standard Enterprise, starting a business, making money, and getting connected. You want to catch up with that article inside the Standard this morning. Let's now shift gears and take a look at business news. Now, CBK sees light at the end of tunnel amid loans shocker. Apex Bank has raised its benchmark lending rate by 50 basis points to 13% from the previous 12.5%. Move puts to fresh test the Ruto government's plan to stabilize the shilling and reduce economic pain for Kenyans. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 18. In matters energy, KPC to shorten testing time for petroleum products in lab. Kenya Pipeline Company yesterday received the go-ahead to test petroleum products across its laboratories. The move is expected to see the firm now undertake testing of fuel internally and reduce the time taken from a day to just 6 hours. Some amazing news there on page 18. Now, moving on, let's now shift gears and move away from home a little bit to international news. Senegal on the brink after elections postponed. Now, Macky Sall reiterated that he was not planning to run for office again. His critics accuse him of either trying to cling on to power or unfairly influencing whoever succeeds him. That story is beefed up for you on page 20. On page 21, in Tanzania, sobering moment for Zanzibar as alcohol shortage hits islands. Now, the Spice Islands of Zanzibar are facing a shortage of alcohol, which threatens the tourism sector of one of Africa's top travel destinations. You want to catch up with that story on page 21. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at sports news inside the Standard this morning. Now, Nadal and Djokovic set for new Saudi exhibition event. Alcaraz, Medvedev and Sina will also feature in the competition scheduled for October. The Six Kings Slam event will form part of the Saudi Cultural and Entertainment Festival Riyadh season. That story is covered on page 29. On page 30, it's all about golfing. It's time for the big tee off at Vipingo's PGA Baobab course. Over 100 world-class golfers are expected to participate in the tournament. Naomi Wafula is among the Kenyans to watch. That story is beefed up for you on page 30. In English Premier League, champs Man City turn up, hit in title race. Manchester City's giant shadow is looming large in the rearview mirror of their rivals as they make one of those familiar charges that turns up the psychological pressure and verbally ends in success. That story is also beefed up for you on page 30. On page 31, it's all about the African Cup of Nations. Eyes on the prize. Bafana eyeing maiden AFCON win against Super Eagles. Nigeria emerged from Group A undefeated on 7 points. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 31. Also still on Africa Cup of Nations, Battle of Premiership, goalkeepers in AFCON semi-final. Now, two goalkeepers from South Africa's DStv Premiership have been the headline acts with the gloves at the Africa Cup of Nations in the Ivory Coast and will go head-to-head in the semi-finals today for what is possibly a clash to decide the Golden Glove Award. That story is beefed up for you on page 31. On page 32, Elephants hoping to continue their roller coaster ride. Hosts narrowly squeezed through group stage, beat Senegal on penalties and hit later winner against Mali with 10 men. DR Congo is the latest team that will try to end Ivory Coast's dream as they battle in the semi-finals today. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page. Now, with that story, we come to the end of the Standard this morning. We shift gears and take a look at the top stories making the headlines inside the Daily Nation. Now, taking on Raila, this is about power struggle, factional wars within opposition, coalition links to 2027 polls. Now, a year to the 2022 elections, One Kenya Alliance brought together politicians, including Kalonzo Musyoka, seeking to step out of Raila Odinga's shadow and field as presidential candidate. The alliance collapsed now a year after the polls. Kalonzo and Eugene Wamalwa are at it again. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, deadlock as governors demand 59 billion shillings more for counties. Now, the National Treasury has offered counties 391 billion shillings, and the Commission on Revenue Allocation recommended 398 billion shillings. But governors has demanded 439.5 billion as the equitable share and 10.52 billion shillings for the road maintenance levy fund. That story is beefed up for you on page 19. Also, on the cover page, teachers to snub TSC forum on new controversial bill. Kenya National Union of Teachers has vowed to boycott a session convened by Teachers Service Commission today to discuss proposed changes to the law. Union leaders lament most of the amendments will hurt teachers and they will not allow the commission to exploit tutors. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page. Now, also inside the Daily Nation this morning on page 4, employment, female-only nursing jobs that also attract men. The 2,500 positions in Saudi Arabia had 1,000 applicants, including 500 male, despite the posts being exclusively for women. Also, Money Talks, men's charmer that has excited locals in Meru. For more than 5 years, the men, most of them in their 50s and 60s, met at the local shopping center to socialize and play ajua. The popular game today their charmer has an enviable /fund. That story is augmented for you on page 2. of the Daily Nation this morning. Also inside the Daily Nation is the DN2 parenting article, How to Parent the First Digital Generation. You want to catch up with that story on the DN2 article inside the Daily Nation. Now, that brings us to the end of taking a look at the top stories making the headlines on the papers this morning. Now, I want us to talk about something, the affordable housing paradox. This is a conversation that we are going to have here on Younib TV tomorrow morning, and we will be hosting a guest who is a real estate developer. Now, this comes after the parliament, or rather the Parliamentary Budget Office, took a new twist yesterday, and they are saying that the affordable housing may not be affordable to the common mwananchi who was targeted with the project. Now, the Parliamentary Budget Office is now warning that the intended beneficiaries of the government's affordable housing program may be locked out, as over 70% of those targeted are classified as middle and low income earners. And now I want you to join the conversation using our platform, Younib Media TV on Facebook, and you can also send in your sentiments via our SMS line 0719144144, and I'll be able to read them in a few. Now, we continue with that story. The Parliamentary Budget Office found that high-income earners were likely to benefit more, as 36% of funds set aside for the project were earmarked for the construction of institutional housing programs and projects which target individuals with a monthly income of above 149,000 shillings. So get this, through the program, though the program was billed as one aimed at uplifting Kenyans living in deplorable conditions, facilitating access to affordable homes, and bridging the existing housing deficit of over 2 million units, it appears the plan may, after all, only favor the privileged. A financial and economic analysis of the Affordable Housing Bill 2023 by the Parliamentary Budget Office found that home ownership for those with a gross income of less than 50,000 shillings is low, despite the government classifying beneficiaries into three, where 30% of the funds will be set aside for social housing, targeting those with a monthly income of below 20,000 shillings, and another 30% earmarked for affordable housing projects targeting persons with a monthly income of between 20,000 shillings and 149,000 shillings. The third 36% set aside for institutional housing program and projects targeting those earning above 149,000 shillings. Again, the Parliamentary Office noted that while statistics have shown that despite the numbers of those formally and informally employed being huge, representing 74%, only 60% of the funds had been allocated to their categories of houses. Yes, this was one of the issues that came up during public participation, the concern being the disparity in allocations, and it will be one of the matters that will be debated on. Those are sentiments of Jonah Ngeno, the Housing Committee Chairman. The Research Office also noted that there was a lack of clarity on how the funds will be utilized under the Kenya Slum Upgrading, Low-Cost Housing and Infrastructure Fund, especially since counties are part of the program, proposing that a framework for utilization of the funds be developed. During public participation, concerns were raised over whether the government may decide to utilize proceeds from the housing levy for other functions. The office was further concerned that if the housing levy remained nullified, and with the government already grappling with a shortage of resources, it is likely those contractual agreements between developers and the government may run into headwinds. Some of the issues raised by members of the public include: does the housing levy have an exit clause, and has the committee managed to address issues the court flagged as unconstitutional? Now, the report of the Joint Committee of Finance and Housing will be tabled in Parliament next week for consideration. Indeed, it is a paradox that is yet to be addressed. Of course, the president has not yet spoken about these concerns that were raised yesterday. We are waiting to see the course this affordable housing project is going to take after this analysis. And now let's take a look at what you are saying. This is via our SMS line. Now, watching the news on affordable housing in Kenya is disheartening. The disparity in fund allocation raises serious concerns about the government's commitment to truly helping the vulnerable. Those are sentiments by George Aoko. Now, I'm deeply worried about the lack of clarity on fund utilization for slum upgrading. If the government can't provide a clear framework, how can we trust the affordable housing program to make real impact? That is Salim Onyango. Now, on the other end, as a low-income earner, the news about high-income earners benefiting more from the affordable housing funds is disappointing. The government needs to prioritize those truly in need. These are sentiments from Lillian Waka, says he is watching us from Rongai. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, kudos to the Parliamentary Budget Office for shedding light on the flaws in the Affordable Housing Bill. The government must address these concerns and ensure the program benefits those living in deplorable conditions. Those are sentiments by Raphael Juguna. Accountability, he says, hashtag accountability. Now, Elvis Doso says, I participated in public discussions on the housing levy, and the lack of clarity on its utilization is a serious red flag. The government needs to be transparent and ensure the funds are used as promised. Thank you so much, Elvis. Now, we move on swiftly. Steve Ouma says, concerns about the housing levy and the potential impact on contractual agreements are valid. If the government doesn't act swiftly, we could see serious repercussions for both developers and those in need of housing. Hashtag affordable housing. Thank you so much, Steve. Now, we have Ada Cheng, who also says the affordable housing bill was supposed to address the housing deficit, but it seems like it might favor the privileged. Let's hope the joint committee's report in Parliament next week brings about positive changes. Thank you so much, Ada, for those sentiments. Lastly, we take a look at Cecilia Yan, who says, I appreciate the news coverage on affordable housing issues. It is crucial for citizens to stay informed and hold the government accountable for ensuring that funds are used wisely to benefit those who need it most. Information is power. Cecilia is congratulating journalists for doing an amazing job. Thank you so much, Cecilia. Now, with those sentiments from Cecilia, we come to an end of today's session of the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much for choosing to stay with the Morning Momentum, and thank you so much for also choosing to stay with Younib TV. Keep watching Younib TV. Of course, as I have promised, tomorrow we'll be talking about the affordable housing paradox. We'll be having someone who is an expert in matters real estate development. And this is a conversation you don't want to miss. So we'll take a look at it in depth, and we will be answering your questions. Where are the missing links? Was the affordable housing a good idea? Is it going to benefit low-income earners as earlier intended? Or it is going to benefit only those who are earning more? Of course, we've seen also the analysis from the Parliamentary Budget Committee that came out yesterday. So much of this, we'll be talking about them tomorrow on the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much to also all those who made this broadcast a success. Raphael Wangila behind the camera, and the Chief Controller, Anifa Kavira. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Wednesday.